What's up, you beauties? Welcome to the High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel trade deadline episode. I'm your host, Jim Iacovone, joined as always by Jack Smith and his son,
Sean Smith. Yes,
his HW hockey debut.
Yes, he'll be joining us for this. Wonderful. It's all about the future. The trade deadline is about the future. This is the future.
That's it. If you're catching us live on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button, hit the alert so you never miss a show. If you're watching us on Facebook or Twitter, make sure you head over to YouTube and give us a subscribe. Help us on our quest to 1,000 subscribers. We've recently put out a couple episodes, couple videos. We had a podcast earlier this week, but stick with us here for the next 2 hours as we're going to be covering the last couple hours of the trade deadline. We'll be joined by Mr. Derek Nasty Settlemyre of the Nasty Knuckles podcast at the top of the hour around 2 o'clock. So we're excited to have him on. It's been a little while since we've had Derek on, being able to catch up there. We want to talk to him about a certain player that was moved, Jack. And I don't know if it was a little bit anticlimactic now that Scott Laughton has been moved ahead of when we came on. But we're definitely, I want to ask Derek, what's a team getting in Scott Laughton? Because he's been around him for a long time. He's good buddies with him. He's friends with him. He's had him on his show a bunch of times. So we'll be able to tell fans and listeners, and if there's anybody from Toronto checking in, Derek will be able to explain what kind of person, what kind of locker room presence that the Toronto Maple Leafs are getting. There was also an appetizer of a trade that happened just minutes before with Andrei Kuzmenko being sent out to Los Angeles. I thought that was an interesting trade, Jack. If you guys have been listening to us, that's kind of what we thought was going to happen this whole time with Kuzmenko. From the second that trade hit, Jack, what were we saying? Player, prospect, pick is kind of, Briere's blueprint for what he wants back for some of these guys, right?
Absolutely. And I know people are getting a little nervous, to say the least, maybe even freaking out. I will say myself, as we got closer and closer to when our show was about to start, I was kind of getting a little nervous. But once Kuzmenko went, it felt like, because I didn't even have him, he was like our dark horse to go. He was like our dark horse to go. So it was good to get something for nothing, because you're losing him at the end of the year. I don't think he fits what this team's going to do going forward based on his age. I don't know about Risto. Maybe we'll get into that. But Scott Laughton is finally moved. Love him. Obviously, he's brought back a first plus where we were like, they should have taken the first when they could have. And now look, I've been telling you, it's silly season. Look at what some of these other players are going for. Was it Bolivier went for like a second, and the Ratinen deal is crazy, and just certain. Or what was the other big deal that went down? It was like the other night. There's a couple of deals that went down. You look at some of the returns, and you're just like, holy cow, the Flyers should be able to back up a truck and just load up whatever they want from assets from another team. So, long story short, Kuzmenko's out for a 2027 third-round pick. Laughton at 50% salary retained. Is that just for this season, or is that next year too? I forget how that works. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, that's for the remainder of his contract, yeah.
I thought so.
Yep. So comment here from Shane McCall. I want to know more about the Russian player that Toronto threw in. So we've seen out there, I think Bob McKenzie put it out there that he has some sort of relationship with Matvei Michkov. What I knew his name from was this interview clip right here. When I heard the last name, I'm like, where do I know this guy from? And this was it. Here's the clip.
Team speak me back check, for check, and paycheck.
What do you like?
Just from that clip alone, I'm excited for this kid. It looks like he's got some kind of personality. Maybe he's going to be fun. I'm going to put on the screen share real quick here because I do have some information about the Flyers' newest player. Let me see if I can get it up here. So we'll go to stats first. All right, so here's a little bit about him. Looks like he won the championship with Magnitogorsk Metallurg in the KHL back in 2023-2024. He scored 41 points in 67 games. In 7 games with the Leafs this season, no goals, no points, -3. With the Toronto Marlies this season, his first professional season in North America, He's got 9 goals, 12 assists for 21 points. He's a former 5th-round pick, 135th overall in the 2022 NHL draft. A 6'2" right wing forward. He weighs over 200 pounds. So this is a bigger player, certainly by the Flyers standards, which is a good thing. They've kind of been, acquiring a lot of the smaller guys of late. They acquire a bigger player in. How do you say this guy's name? Grebenkin. I'm going to have to get used to saying that, I think. But yeah, I mean, people overall seem to be somewhat excited for this guy. I know nothing about him outside of that interview, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm excited. Obviously, we'll do our homework on this show, and we'll report back, during the week on our next podcast. Jack, your first thoughts upon seeing Nikita Grebenkin, I guess, from that small interview and some of his stats here.
I actually had never seen the interview. That was a first for me, so that's fantastic. My first thought was it's not Fraser Minton, who I wasn't really in on. Very low ceiling player. So I was out on that alone. I was going to replace Scott Laughton with Scott Laughton. Like that, I'd rather take a less of a chance, but still a chance at somebody who would be in your top 6. And I'm not saying that he'll be that guy, but he has a chance to be that guy. And then just because I don't know a whole lot about the player and I don't know how much stock you put into AHL stats. I just read basically what the Toronto fans were saying, and they were mostly saying that they overpaid for Laughton, which is what you want to hear. I guess my only negative is the pick is 2027, not 2026, because there is a top 10 protection on it. So obviously can't be this year's, but you still got a 1st-round pick plus for Scott Laughton. I don't care that we gave him a 4th and a 6th-round pick. I don't care that we're retaining money. He's only making $3 million, so you're retaining $1.5 million. Like, come on. So yeah, it's exactly what needed to happen. It happened. It wasn't Torts holding them back. Danny's running this team. Been hearing some silly tweets out there. It's exactly what needed to happen. And, fingers crossed, maybe something else happens. I doubt it, but if it ended today, if it ended right now, I would be fine, more than fine, with the returns we got at the trade deadline.
Yeah. And I had Grebenkin somewhere on here. So he's, he's on a rookie contract until next season. So he's an RFA in 2026, 2027. So, I would expect that he's a player that pops into the Flyers lineup right away with the Kuzmenko move. And you're losing 2 roster players so far today. That opens up a roster spot. And let's be honest, there's no Flyer forward that's really knocking down the door. There's 20 games left in the season. Let's see what Grebenkin can do, So you get the player there. You get the 2027 1st-round pick, which is important for the Flyers to keep stocking up on picks, if they're doing this rebuild thing. So it doesn't look like it's updated yet in 2027, but in 2027, they'll now have 2 1st-round picks, a 2nd-round pick, and 2/3 after the deal with Kuzmenko. So, this is what you want to be seeing from a team that's rebuilding, stocking up on assets, future assets. And so, I'm not going to be negative, at least not yet, but you can see the Twitter timeline. It's like everyone remain calm. And then as Thursday night comes around, it's like people start to change. People are starting to get weird. And then, into the wee hours of the night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, people just flat out they get angry and irrational. And they wake up today, they go, like, we're all kind of like, is something going to happen? And just be patient. And I think that's kind of the theme so far that we're seeing. Look, be patient. Something's going to happen every time. Like Danny he's pulled off a move now every year. I don't know. Last year it was Scott Walker. He got the 1st-round pick for Scott Walker. This year he gets a 1st-round pick, albeit in 2027.
Jim,
and a prospect.
I got to say real quick, you've called him Matt Walker. You've called him Scott Walker.
Did I call him Matt Walker today?
You're probably going to call him Luke Skywalker. I know but it is Sean Walker. Go ahead, continue.
So I've done that since the day they traded. I think I did it on Twitter. I called him Scott Walker on Twitter. Did I call him Matt Walker just now?
You called him Scott Walker today, probably because Scott Laughton.
That's funny, man.
In the past, we had a Matt Walker was a guy we acquired when we traded Gagne to Tampa. I'm like, man, he's calling it. I get it. I usually worse, but it's funny with that one player.
Yeah, that won't be. It won't be the last. I mean, how many times have we done that in the last 3 years, whatever it is, 2 years? That won't be the last time. So I'll just say Walker from now on. Jonathan Nesbitt chimes in with a comment from what he's seen from Grebenkin. He's got a big personality and also plays with some grit and swagger. That one interview, he had multiple such entertaining comments. And that's fun. Flyers get a guy with some personality in Grebenkin.
Perfect for Philly.
Yeah.
Did I read? I thought somebody said he's actually friends with Michkov. Was that just BS? Or
I think it was Bob McKenzie that said that on TSN. I didn't see it. I only saw the tweet. So hopefully that's true. Let's talk a little bit more about the Kuzmenko deal. And you know, when that deal first went down, that was my instant thought was, okay, you know, they get a pick. What was it? A second round pick in the Farabee Frost deal. They get a guy like Peltier, you know, maybe a reclamation project prospect. Same situation as Frost, let's say, an RFA after the end of the year, and a player like Kuzmenko, who has scored 39 goals in his past, had a rough go once Tocchet took over in Vancouver, was traded to Calgary, had a good start with Calgary, and this year kind of came back down to earth a little bit. Was traded to the Flyers, had the Flyers on his team, on his list of teams he did not want to be traded to. And for me, that was, boom, red flag. You know, not only has he been traded twice in the last couple seasons after scoring 39 goals, so another red flag, but he had the Flyers on his team, a list of teams. So he waives it to come here. And it's like, okay, well, why would he do that? Would he do it to play with Michkov? Did the Flyers tell him, hey, we're going to try to flip you? And for me, I was in the boat of, I think they're going to try to flip him. You know, whether it was this season, maybe they would have re-signed him to a one-year deal if things went well and flipped him next year. Jack, it ended up being almost a month, a little bit over a month since they traded for him. What did you think about that?
We had mentioned before, like, and I've seen it in our notes, and we never really brought it up, but it was that Jonesy and Briere had to talk to Kuzmenko before he agreed to the trade. And we were wondering what was said in that deal. Was it about re-signing? Was it about flipping him to a contender? That seems to be what it was. At least, I'm not saying it's 100%, but based on how the trade deadline has gone down, that's what it's about. It was a little bit, hey, ride with us, play with Michkov, or be on the team with Michkov, and we'll flip you to a contender come the trade deadline. And he obviously agreed to do it and came here, and that's what they did. I know it's not, you know, the Jets or the Capitals, but it would be nice if he helps LA finally knock off Edmonton, and we got their pick. So get them out of, because they're looking like they're going to play in the first round again. I don't know if they played each other like for 4 straight years, but I do know LA has been a bounce 4 straight years in a row in the playoffs. So it makes sense.
Yep. Sure does. And, you know, he had a nice little stint here, 5 points in 7 games, -5 during those games. And I guess he did enough to showcase, you know, he could have been a cheap middle 6 offensive addition for a playoff team. And the Kings bit. The Flyers had to retain some money, but that's okay because he's not signed past this year. They get a 3rd round pick. So, yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, they get the future 3rd round pick. And there were people on Twitter that were upset with this deal, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. Like, and I get that it's a natural instinct for people to just want to bitch and complain. Earmuffs, Sean. Sorry about that. But like, you were going to lose this guy for nothing. He didn't want to be here in the first place, you know? I saw it as they wanted to make the money work with Farabee. So, okay, toss us over Kuzmenko. We'll try to flip him, you know, and that's exactly what they did. You know, there were some rumors as well that he's not the easiest guy to get along with. So, you know, as much as we wanted to connect, Kuzmenko's Russian, Michkov's Russian. Oh, they got to get along. I'm not sure that's always how it works, right? Like, there are good, how can I say this? Just because I'm Italian doesn't mean I'm going to get along with another guy because he's Italian American or whatever it is. Just because these two guys are Russian doesn't mean they're going to mesh. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff for me doesn't always fly. And based off, you know, the little rumors that, you know, people talk, completely different people off the ice. So I think it was in the Flyers' best interest to move them, and they did.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the talk about bringing him back, and I just look at his age and everything you just said as well. And it made the most sense just to get what you could for him. And I know he had a nifty new move the other night and a nifty goal, but this is what a rebuilding team is supposed to do, right, Sean? Thank you. So yeah. So look, I can't. Yeah, exactly. Linden here. I'll take the third run. Is exactly how I felt.
Yeah, and here's a comment from Ronnie Chernowayan. Ronnie, if I said your last name wrong there, I'm just going to call you Cherno. So Ronnie chimes in, Peltier second, third, and the seventh for Farabee and Frost is meh. And so, let's consider this. Frost was an RFA after this year. Probably not going to – Flyers, I think they're just done. They were done with them. Same with the Flames and Peltier. So I would look at it as Peltier in a second for Frost, and then third and seventh just to get rid of Farabee with that contract. 2 goals in Calgary, not exactly lighting it up there. So you get the $5 million off the books for the next 3 seasons. You get Kuzmenko back. So there's no money. You have $5 extra million to play with now the next 3 years that you wouldn't have had before. Farabee is essentially a cap dump for a third and a seventh. Yeah, underwhelming because of what we thought Farabee could be here, but he just wasn't living up to that potential. Also, I want to say the 2 players moved in that deal, I don't think were very fond of Torts. And it was known in small circles. So it was no surprise to me that they were moved. And it was kind of funny that they were moved together. That's my thoughts on that. What do you think about that, Jack?
Not only that, but they were both what we got in the Braden Shen deal. But yeah, look, they've identified both of those players that they're not a part of the future. And if anybody got a chance, it was Morgan Frost, because Briere saw, I guess, himself in him. He wore his number and everything. It didn't work out. And I'm so far, I'm not worried. Even if they do figure some things out in Calgary, I don't see it being what we expected them ultimately to be here. Farabee was not living up to his contract. He was every year getting less and less away from where that contract was worth. And what do you even do with Frost now? You need centers, and he's not thriving. And you have players on your team like TK and Michkov and whatnot. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense for where this team was headed. And then you acquire some assets, which are great, but also cap space, which is huge, which is something this team has been positioning to do something. Now, part of this is with the cap space they get, doing something with it. So that'll be, the final part of that. But for now, I really can't complain.
Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of dive into some other deals here. And obviously the big one, we're going to talk some Ristolainen for sure. Ryan Paling's name has been out there. Cam York, maybe a dark horse. And what I find interesting about that, Jack, is, I've been saying Cam York for the last 2 years for me would be the odd man out. And of late, maybe within the last couple months, his name's picked up steam. And, some of these, I would say, maybe larger accounts, at least locally, are starting to chime in. Cam York's name is starting to pop up on these accounts as well. So I want to talk Cam York at some point during the show. For now, let's touch on some of these other deals. And, let's start out with the Mikko Rantanen deal where, so originally he was acquired by Carolina and for Marty Nietzsche. There were, a couple other parts in that. And I'm trying to figure out how you acquire a player like Mikko Rantanen and not know that you could potentially not be able to sign him, right? And so apparently he didn't want to sign in Carolina, or Carolina didn't want to sign him for what he wanted to sign for. And all of a sudden they're stuck holding the bag here, kind of like they were with Jake Gensel last year, right? They were in panic mode a little bit. So they finally find a partner late last night, I believe around 11 or 12. And in the Dallas Stars, who sure made a lot of sense. I also want to talk about these no income tax state teams getting all these big players in a little bit. But Mikko Rantanen to the Dallas Stars, it gets finalized today, right? And the return is, off-season favorite for Calder, the Calder Trophy this year, Logan Stankoven, gets traded along with a few first-round picks to the Carolina Hurricanes, and Rantanen goes to the Dallas Stars. What are your thoughts on all of that, Jack, on how the Hurricanes handled that deal, what they gave up to get Rantanen and then what they got for Rantanen?
Yeah, I guess fortune favors the bold, right? But it can also bite you. Considering they just did this with, like you said, last year with Gensel, and now this, it is very strange. It's risky. I like risk, but you got to see, like, if it were like the Rangers or Chicago, and I'm not saying where the team is, just like what the team is, the city, whatnot. Carolina, it doesn't exactly strike me as the biggest destination. And on top of that, isn't their owner cheap anyway? Like, it just didn't jive. If he was interested in resigning, well, what were they going to offer? Because they're not going crazy. And I didn't see him. A guy like that's going to probably want to test free agency or pick where he wants to go. And Carolina seemed like it'd be pretty low on that list. As good as Carolina has been, it's not exactly a destination city for really any sport when I think about it. So it seemed risky. You could say, well, they were going to lose Nietzsche's anyway, so they're just gearing up for a playoff run, but you shouldn't think that way. And most teams and GMs don't. And Tulsky is usually, I know he's an analytics darling, but he's usually pretty smart. I've liked other things he's done, but this was a strange one. However, to get back what he got back for, it definitely saved him, because to get Stankoven 2 first-round picks, and I believe there were other small pieces as well, that's not a bad haul at all. Now, how does that help you? I guess Stankoven can help you a bit, but unless they make some other move within an hour, I don't see that happening either. So as far as this season is concerned and their push towards the playoffs, it's funky, it's strange. I don't know if it did anything to the locker room. I'm glad you brought that up. I saw that the comment earlier. TSN just roasted Tulsky on for trading for Rantanen without going for it in the playoffs. And I guess a lot of GMs, they just don't think that way. Some of them are like, they think of the whole picture. He is the new GM there. It's not like he's at the end and he's just going to acquire whoever and then just get fired, and it is what it is. So he's got to think about the long-term success of that team. And that's a team that moves a lot of pieces around, in and out. If you look at the history of the Hurricanes, first it was the defense. They always have like shifting names in defense, and now it seems to be the same with the forwards. So I kind of get it from their standpoint. And they got to be careful with what they do, because they can't spend a lot of money. They have cheap ownership there. So I think it was a bad move. It was low percentage chance of working out the way that they would have liked, but they definitely saved it. They rectified it and saved it, and we'll see how Stankoven fits. I doubt they'll add anything else, but what did they really add for this year going forward for their playoff push? Not a whole lot.
Yeah, I got to say, man, so I have some opinions on what Carolina's doing, and this GM, I'm not sure he's sending the right message to his club. I understand that they don't want to lose. They don't want to give up the assets that they gave up for Rantanen and just have him walk in the summer. But what kind of message does that send your organization? What does it send to a coach like Rob Brindamore, to the players in Carolina? You go from losing Jake Gensel last season. Now Mikko Rantanen doesn't want to play for your team long-term this season. What's the vibe starting to look like? The Hurricanes have lost a lot of good players in the last few years now. And if I'm a player and I'm playing to win the Stanley Cup, I don't give a shit about next year yet. I know that, we're tops in the division. Sorry, once again, Sean, earmuffs on that. Tops in the Eastern Conference. And we acquire a player like Rantanen. We give up a player like Nietzsche's, who has grown with us. This is a guy that we've all built relationships with. We ship him out for a guy that doesn't want to be here. I know he's one of the better players in the NHL, but he comes here and he doesn't want to be here. The vibes are low, in my opinion, right? And now you move him. Instead of saying, hey, you're here to win a cup with these guys, you move him for, I don't want to say pennies on the dollar, because Logan Stankoven's a hell of a player. But these first-round picks that Dallas gave up, they're going to be late picks. right? And, Stankoven, while a good player in his own right, is no Marty Necas, and he's no Mikko Rantanen. He's a younger guy. Sure, he's got the playoff experience. He's been on a good team like Dallas. And maybe he'll come in and play very well. I'm just not sure the message is, guys, we're going for it. To me, it's I screwed up and I'm trying to make up for it, guys, and I'm not sure how much confidence that would instill in me as a player. So I'm curious to see what happens in Carolina here going forward.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, it's tough. It's part of me is like, why didn't you just go for it? But was there something to Ratton? Like, he hadn't been playing all that well. He definitely did not want to be moved. He was upset about that. They wouldn't talk to him and all that. Was it an issue internally? Like, I don't know. I either way, it's a bad look. So maybe they should have looked elsewhere. While their future could still be bright, they got some nice assets and whatnot. This season seems a little funky, and that's never good.
No. Yeah, it's tough. So we have a depth chart view here of Dallas. Let me see if I can bring this up. This might help the viewers. Screen share. All right. So you should be looking at the Dallas Stars forward grouping here. And I believe Mikko Rantanen will slide into that top line right wing forward spot once this is all updated. So you're looking at a top line of Jason Robertson, Roope Hintz, and Mikko Rantanen. Once Matt Duchene is back from injury, I believe he's going to be back for playoffs. You have Michael Granlund, who can fill in at center as well. Wyatt Johnson's still there, who I think you wanted to talk about, Jack, or somebody in the comments mentioned him. You have Mason Marchman, who's playing very well, Evgeny Dadonov, Jamie Benn. This is a very deep forward group. We're looking at Maverick Bourque, Sam Steele. And then defense-wise, look, I don't know what their cap is going to be after acquiring Rantanen, or if they have enough money to acquire another D. I know Miro Heiskanen is out, Nils Lundqvist is out here. And so they're rolling with Ilya Lyubushkin, Cody Ceci, Matt Dumba. I still think they could use a little bit of help on the back end, but this is an absolutely stacked team in Dallas, Jack.
They look ridiculous. And if they can, get some people back healthy. Did they acquire? I think they acquired any defense they acquired. I cannot remember. Right? We had them get interested in Risto, but now I don't see how they acquire much of anything.
Yeah, there'd have to be quite a big sum of money retained on the Flyers end. Let's see.
A player coming back. We talked Dumba potentially, but I don't see it happening.
So the Flyers, after moving Laughton and Kuzmenko, currently have $12 million in cap space, Jack. How about that?
Not bad.
They had $8 million when the day started. Hey, I think our guest popped in. We'll give Nasty a sec. Just on time, too. 1:59. Man, what a punctual guy. Let me take the screen share off. And everybody, the moment you've all been waiting for. We'll give Nasty a second. But yeah, a lot to get to. Excited to talk to Dare about his experience, obviously being around the Flyers for over 25 years. And should have some cool stories about Scott Laughton to tell, and be able to tell, if Toronto fans are listening, what they're getting in a player like Scott Laughton. Any smaller deals, Jack, we want to touch on before we get Nasty on here? Anything that kind of popped out at you or surprised you?
What did Luke Shed just go for?
I think he went for a second and a fourth. That could be wrong.
I think it's second and something. I thought that was a much. I need him in front of me. I'm trying to think. There was a trade that went down before today that we're seeing the return, and we're like, wow, when did that happen? And I think that's what. Well, you know what we should talk about? We should talk about Ristolainen and the rumored ask that Briere wanted from other teams. I believe it was like a first, a prospect, and was it a player?
Yeah, perfect. Loved it. And I think when people hear player, prospect, pick, their mind instantly goes to, they want a top pick, a top prospect, and a top player. Like, no, they're going to get a very late pick. they're going to get a project prospect, and they're going to get a player maybe like the Dumba, Labushkin, or who would we mention the other night? Cody Ceci. Like that's going to be the player prospect pick. And so I think when people see that, they're like, oh, that's way too much. And when it's reality, it's not that much.
If that's what it is, yeah. I just put like, I do think that if the ask was as is, it is kind of ridiculous, but I feel like you shoot for the stars, hope you land on a cloud. You still get a lot.
Yeah, and it's I'm sure they did the same thing with Laughton, right? They wanted the player prospect pick, and they found a way to not get David Kampf back. Like maybe they didn't need him, so they'll just retain money on Laughton, and we don't need a roster player back. But I'm sure they asked for a player prospect pick, and they got a prospect, and they got a pick out of it.
Right.
So, all right. With no further ado, let's bring in our special guest of our HW Hockey Trade Deadline episode, Mr. Derek Nasty Settlemyre. Derek, how you been, man?
I'm well, man. How are you, brother?
Doing well, dude. It's good to finally have you back on. It's been a while. You're a busy guy over there at Nasty Knuckles these days.
Yeah, I think it's more busy with my son running him around. I'm like an Uber with all of his hockey. I feel like I don't know what to do with myself this weekend because season's over. So anyway, yeah, man, it's great to see you, buddy. I haven't seen you. I don't think I saw you. I haven't seen you since the golf thing we did.
That's right.
A while back.
That was a good time. We should do that again. That was fun. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. Excited to talk to you. I mean, who better to get on and talk about some of the players on this roster? You spent a lot of time with Scott Laughton during your time with the team. I mean, you guys are still, I think, good buddies outside of hockey, and you've had him on your show a bunch of times. Popular name around the trade deadline circles, not only this year, but it seems like every year. Really,
it
right?
does. Yeah, it does.
You guys had him on your show around this time last year. You got him with that prank. I think everybody saw that. That was pretty good. Not a prank this year. It's fine. No. He's actually moved. And can you tell us what the Flyers are losing in a player and a human being in Scott Laughton?
Yeah, it's funny actually. We messaged him I think Monday and kind of kidding because we knew what this week was going to be like, and talking to people inside, you basically knew it was happening, right? With Scott this year. And I said, why don't you jump on with us? We got Chris Pronger jumping in, and he knows Lots a little bit, and he goes, F you guys. He's like, I'm not coming back on this year after what you did to me a couple years ago. But a lot of fans don't understand. I know you guys do. You get it. There's so much more that goes into it than just what's on the ice. It's off the ice, a lot of it, and in the community as well with Scott Laughton. But you talk about Lots, and it brings a smile to the people that really know him. It brings a smile to your face because he's such a character, but he knows when to turn the switch on, and he keeps guys accountable. But he's a great guy in the locker room, and people are like, well, look at his numbers. I mean, actually, if you really want to look at it, his cap hit isn't bad for what he brings to a team. And again, I understand a lot of people are just looking at on ice, things. But there's a reason 8+ teams are looking to add him to their team, because it is more than just on the ice. Obviously, he's got to perform on the ice. He's kind of like a utility knife, right? Like he can kind of go up and down your lineup if you need him to. Yes. I think he fits in perfectly at a 3C, and on a really, really good team, probably even a 4C. And the thing about Scott is he's willing to do that. He proved that years ago when Hexy was there, and I was still with the team, and he got sent down the whole year, and you didn't hear one bad word come out of his mouth. All he did was work hard and become the player that he is. Meaning he could play on your fourth line if he's got to fill in. At the 2C, or if he had to play wing, either wing, he's willing to do it. And he's just one of those guys. It breaks your heart when a guy like that leaves the team. But on the other side of it, it's nice to see him go have a chance, right?
Absolutely. And, it gives us a reason to, I think, root for the Leafs this year. And there you go. Yeah. Lyndon says it there. Now I got to cheer for the Leafs. And, he's one of those guys where you'll find yourself rooting for the Leafs to finally, win a cup. And how nice of a story would that be,
It would be great. I know all the Flyers. Then the fans that didn't want to get rid of him, like, always happens, we get rid of somebody. But Scott's, I kind of, Craig Berube is one of my best friends, and so I've watched more Toronto Maple Leaf games this year than I ever have, and I talked to him a lot, and I knew they were really trying to get Lofts because he knows what he brings, right? Like, he knows what kind of a person he is, what kind of a player he is, and Lofts could go into any room. I don't care where it is. He could go to a Russian team and not be the only person that doesn't speak it, and he would fit right in. He's just one of those people. So I'm happy for Lofts. I hope they can. I don't think Toronto's done, man. There's only been about 9. You guys may know a little bit better than me. I've been in here working and sharpening wheels, just sucking down metal into my lungs like I've done most of my life. But I've been trying to keep my eye on everything. But I think there's going to be more. And I think Toronto probably is trying to look for a D as well. But I could be wrong. Maybe Risto, right? Because I know there are teams that are interested. I was talking to a couple of people there with the Flyers, and I think they're trying, but they don't want to give him away either. Because, in my opinion, he's had the best year as a Flyer since he's been here.
I would totally agree. And if you want to drop any nasty bombs on the show, feel free. So
my son's sleeping. It's fine.
Is he asleep? Is he asleep?
He's
I was going to say, who's the big fella there? I
Yeah.
just see the top of his head.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's the best.
Yes, it is.
Special guest. It's his HW debut today.
All right. Get him going early, boys.
Yeah. So you mentioned Scott Laughton as sort of the guy that can step into any room and fit right in. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, you've been in, many locker rooms over the course of your career, and you've seen all types of players. And, how important is a guy like that in a locker room? Because I think for people who, may not have grown up, or maybe they did grow up playing sports and didn't get to the level to where, you don't recognize that a guy like that is just as valuable as a guy that can score, 30, 40 goals, if not more valuable to a team. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And sometimes, you see people's comments. And I mean, I was obviously very fortunate to do what I did for so long, for 26 years being involved. And not to mention my dad being the head trainer with the Flyers, and in Florida with the Panthers, with Clarkie in Minnesota. So I've been so fortunate to get to see a lot of this stuff. And Scott Laughton is one of the, I mean, you have quiet leaders that lead by example on the ice. Mike Richards, to bring up, like he was one of those guys. He would say something if he had to. But like Laughton, he has a pulse on a room, and I'm trying to think of a way to intelligently say this. He's just one of those guys. If you're in a slump, he finds a way to get the guys like motivated in the room, whether it be by laughing, whether it be by closing the doors and going around the room. Like, I know he's not the captain, but he's like a captain here in Philly. He has been for the last few years. It's so important. And I know a lot of fans don't understand that, and that's not their fault, because like you said, maybe they didn't play a lot of sports, but I find myself watching other teams, like say the Eagles, even though I know their equipment guy, I'll like message them and be like, yo, what's up with this dude? And they're like, oh man, you don't understand. This is going on this. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can't understand that. But people look at stats a lot, like you just mentioned, and it's not all about that. But as far as Scott in the room, man, like I don't think he's ever made a mistake in the locker room as far as giving a speech, or just the way he gets guys going. He's one of those people you like being around, and they make you smile and they make you want to work. And man, I can't say enough about him. He's obviously a good friend of mine, and I'm not saying all this because of that. I'm just telling the truth. Things like that are so valuable to hockey teams. And yeah, he doesn't score 30 goals a year, but man, he'll do anything. He'll do anything to win. He'll get his bag ripped open with a slap shot to win a game, and to, just to win. And he's just such a leader in the locker room and on the ice too. You guys watch, you see him. He'll do anything he can. And if he plays 5 minutes a night, he's not the guy going in the room with a lip hanging down to the floor. he's still positive, and they might play 18 minutes a night, but it doesn't matter with Scott. He can play first line, he can play fourth line. He's always had the right attitude. I don't think I've ever seen him in all the years I've known Scott to be a down guy. Like, even if things weren't going great, obviously the last few years haven't been great. I haven't been there for 4 now in the locker room. I've been around the guys a lot, so I'm fortunate for that, to hear a lot of what's going on. I can't tell it because, then I wouldn't be told things, but he's just, Jimmy, he's just so important, and he's going to fit. Like I said, he could fit in any room. Those guys are going to love him in Toronto. I tell you, and I know Chief was pushing hard to get him.
That makes a lot of sense, and excited for Laughton to potentially make a deep playoff run. He hasn't really had that opportunity here with the Flyers, especially of late. Last time the Flyers made the playoffs was the bubble year, which was weird, and then they had that year. I think they played Pittsburgh under Hackstall and kind of got waxed out of the first round there. Can you tell a little bit like who's the last player that you've seen like Laughton that maybe got moved? Like, what's the locker room going to look like now that he's gone? Does somebody have to kind of step up and fill that void, or can somebody, or what's that look like?
I think you have some veteran guys in there. Like, TK's been here, a while now. He's another guy that's great in the room. He wears his heart on his sleeve, as you guys know. You've watched him play now for how many years? Coots too. Like, Coots isn't as vocal. He's more of a guy Coots has battled with some injuries, and everybody knows about like last year, which I just thought was terrible, and gets named captain, and then she turned around and scratched him the next day. But Coots and TK, and even guys like Hathaway and guys that have been around, everyone's going to be sad. Trust me, it's a tough day in that room, because he is probably the favorite guy for everyone, because Lotz is the guy that a kid gets called up, he'll make that kid feel like he's been there for 5 years, and he's that guy that, if you saw everyone's talking about, even on national television, about the Last Supper picture, how great that was. Like, that was him. He took the staff out for dinner. Like, that was, it's just the kind of guy he is. So it's going to be tough. You're going to miss him, right? Because you always, Lotz, when he's mic'd, is great, because you can hear how vocal he is and the way he does things. It definitely hits your room hard. I remember a few years ago, I guess it was 2019, the day after we played the outdoor game at the link, and we lost Wayne. I think it was the next day or 2 days after, whatever it was. We knew it was basically going to be his last game, unfortunately. It changed. If you look, we were like, I'm not saying we're going to make the playoffs, but we were climbing. We were kind of like the Flyers last year, were maybe overachieving, but we were playing well. And you lose Wayne, and I think after that it just went to shit, to be honest with you. And it hurts your room sometimes. Well, a lot of times when you lose a guy like Scott Laughton or Wayne Simmons, but the guys will rally. They understand it's a business. Shitty sometimes, obviously, and things like this. But I'm sure a lot of guys are really pulling for Lotz and the Toronto Maple Leafs now.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the impact he has.
So, like, it kind of sounds like there's going to be an adjustment period for the guys. Who's going to kind of slide in where, or like, there's a major void in the locker room now, right? And they have about a month of season left, a little bit over a month left, and I guess it's going to be interesting to find out, hey, who can step up into this spot, or do they kind of just? I mean, they lost two roster players today, and one great guy, and Laughton. We don't really know Kuzmenko as well, but we know that he adds some skill to the roster. So we'll see what happens with the team as far as where they go in the standings and whatnot. But that's really great insight on Scott Laughton. That's the main reason we wanted to talk to you today, because we know you're close with him, and I felt that it was the right thing to do. Like, let's talk about Scott Laughton a little bit, what he's given up to this team, his whole career, really. I mean, remember when he first started out? He started out in the AHL for a little bit with the Flyers, right? He was a higher draft pick. Let me bring up his his stats here. But I mean, you were around him for a lot of his career. Can you talk about kind of how you saw him transform as a person and player a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, he had the great personality when he first came. If you remember, he started the season out with us. And I think what is it? You get eight or 9 games, kind of like Jet had this year, and then you have to make a decision. And that first year, I'm not sure how many games he played in with us, but he was with the team, and then he got sent back to junior. Obviously, handled that well. And then, like, you're not as vocal when you're a rookie, but with me, like, you come into the room with me, and the guy had me in stitches all the time. Like, he's just a funny guy. We would look at each other on the bench, and it could be something someone said. We wouldn't have to say anything. We just start kind of laughing because we knew what we were thinking. But even his dad, I'm really good buddies with his dad, and God, I see where he gets it. His dad's hilarious. Like, one thing, like, I don't think Lots would get mad at me saying, like, we would always laugh. I'm like, hey, show me what your old man said today. So we would, like, say we're playing Washington, right? They got Tom Wilson, right? Obviously, his dad would be like, he would say, after his nap, he would always send Lots a text, and it would be like, for playing Washington, be like, hey, start it off right, and then grab that Tom Wilson right off the hop and just feed him. And Lots is like, yeah, okay, I'll grab Tom Wilson right away. Yeah, just watching Lots grow up, and Riley and I talk about this quite a bit when we're talking about athletes and how they handle. Sometimes I don't want to call it failure, but sometimes things don't go your way, and it depends on the way you handle that. And Lots is a perfect example to tell kids, or kids growing up to be athletes. Like, he had been playing in NHL, and they sent him down. Like, that could have gone totally different way, right?
Sure.
Trade me. I don't want to go down to the American League. I've been in the NHL. Not a chance. He went right down there. He learned. They taught him how to be a better player on the other side of the puck. He has a little skill, obviously. All these guys, like, you forget, Riley Cote obviously was a tough guy. He led his junior team in scoring. Like, people forget about that these guys were really good players, right? And Lots, he went down there that year, and he improved his game, and he hasn't looked back since, and that's important lesson for a lot of athletes. That was one thing that really, to me, I'm like, man, like, I love this kid anyway, but just a stand-up guy, and said, hey, look, I got to go improve, and if this is what it's going to take for me to play longer in NHL and play more, I'm going to do it. And he did it. And a lot of guys, as you two know, they don't have that attitude.
No. Yeah, it's he's going to be missed. He was so I haven't had a favorite player in quite some time, but if I had to have one, it was Scott Laughton, because I think he demonstrated, perseverance, and had a nice long career here, carved out a really nice niche. I think he was known as the Swiss Army knife type player.
Yeah.
Could play anywhere in the lineup, had no problem playing anywhere in the lineup, and he excelled wherever he played, I thought, So, just a great guy. And I think, good people deserve good things, and hopefully has an opportunity to go win a cup. He wanted to stay here. He was disappointed, didn't want to leave. We heard that for how many years. So in a way, it kind of sucks that he's gone. But he's got a fresh start, fresh opportunity in Toronto. And he's from around Toronto, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah, it's close to home for him. So, he's got another year on his deal as well. So that's kind of good when you do get moved. Like, a lot of times, obviously, as you guys know, that you got unrestricted guys, you're taking that shot. It's a lot for families too, that people, think of Luke Shin in the last few days, man. He gets traded to Pittsburgh, and to me, if that stayed, I'm like, I don't know how much sense that trade makes for either team to uproot guys, but it looks like it's going to work out well, because Luke was traded from Pittsburgh, obviously, today. So,
did you happen to catch, we were talking about that Shen trade earlier. Did you happen to catch where he ended up going to?
I think I wrote it down. Hang on. I'm sorry, boys. Let me,
yeah, sure. No problem.
Geez, maybe I didn't write it down. I had just seen it before I just saw it, and I don't think I got a chance to write it down.
I'll look it up real quick.
Okay, sorry, I apologize.
It's okay.
As soon as you say it, I'll be like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, right? Yeah.
Chat comes through.
Winnipeg.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, he went to Winnipeg, and they picked up Tanev also, who started his career there.
How about that?
Little shit disturber. He'd be a good little flyer, wouldn't he? Guy like
Yeah,
that.
he would have been. Yeah.
But I'm happy for Luke. We've talked about Luke a lot as well. Not to get off subject, but there's a guy who everyone thought his career was basically over. I don't know what Luke did, but the last 4 to 5 years, I mean, this guy's teams want him. I mean, here you go again. When he got traded to Toronto, Riley had his best year in the playoffs with Luke on his right side there, and Winnipeg went and got him today. I mean, yeah, he's your third line pair, but that guy will do anything to win as well. Luke and Braden also, who's still on the board. I don't know if they're going to trade him, but I was talking to Jimmy Montgomery yesterday, and I'm like, God, man, I know it's not his call. It's Army's call, Armstrong's call there, but give away your captain. But, I guess they're kind of figuring they're maybe in a little bit of a rebuild in St. Louis as well. Not that any of your listeners are worried about St. Louis, but it's just interesting to be watching all these moves and what goes on.
Yeah, we've been keeping tabs on Braden Chen. There were rumors that he was potentially going to go out to New Jersey, or New Jersey had interest at the very least. So we've been kind of keeping tabs on him a little bit. You know what's also interesting is 2 former Flyers, now a third former Flyer in Scott Laughton, all being talked about at the trade deadline. Like, it's just it's weird to think that all these guys were Flyers at one point, and now all of a sudden they're these coveted players at the trade deadline this late in their careers and stuff. It's kind of funny how things work out.
It is. So, even Craig Berube, I talked to him almost daily. We were at least text, and he had said a while back to me, it was last year, but we were talking about Luke, and I'm like, man, like, it's incredible how much Luke has turned his career around. Like, obviously, first part of his career was fine, and then it just kind of looked like he was maybe, his game wasn't suited, and all of a sudden, I think when he gets to Tampa, like, I don't know if it's Cooper, I don't know who it was, but and I know Luke's a hardworking guy. It's not just like it just fell into his lap, but it's amazing how coveted he's been in the last couple of years. Like you said, like these Flyers are people. I heard a lot of people kind of shitting on Lotz and he's not worth the money. I'm like, well, actually he is worth the money, but I know some people don't understand that part of the game. So
yeah, it's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like when you don't see these guys, and I'm not going to pretend like Jack and I are around these guys, but we hear stories from listening to your show. You can see people's personalities, and when you hear somebody's a glue guy, people who have been around sports and even in work, if you have glue guys at work, like these people, and when you lose them, it's kind of like, oh, like I've always been friends with you guys. Like I've only ever been friends with this guy. I've just been hanging out with you guys. Does that make sense? And all of a sudden it's like, I'm just now realizing I don't have much in common with you guys. I was just having fun because we were all friends with this guy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the dynamic of how the locker room ends up shaping out and who kind of fills in where. But Jack, you have anything you want to bring up here?
I was just trying to track some deals that went down while we were talking. It looks like Middlestat went to Boston and trying to get who went the Charlie Coyle went the other way. It's the other pieces involved I could not find for sure. And then Detroit acquired Mrazek and
another former Flyer.
What is or one of the guys, Talbot or Lyon hurt? Or one of those guys hurt?
I'm not sure. That's a good question.
Mrazek going back there. I'm just wondering if, because they've actually played fairly well. Maybe one of them, maybe Cam or Alex got injured or something. But
yeah, it's interesting.
That's an interesting move.
I think Joe Veleno went the other way. It was Mrazek and another player. Hang on.
Okay.
Oh wow, Veleno did get moved, huh?
Wow.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. The Avalanche are really kind of loading up over there. I mean, they acquired Brock Nelson last night. I think. Go ahead.
No, you're right, and I think some Islander fans are probably a little like, you don't want to see a guy like that go. It's kind of like Lotz here. Like obviously Brock Nelson, is more of a scoring guy, but he's a glue guy there. I don't know if you saw his interview the other night. It was pretty emotional for him, even thinking about getting moved. But like to me, I respect Lou Lamoriello so much, a USA Hockey guy, and everything he's done. But man, like I feel like they're just the same team every year, right? Like he's got to sooner or later start doing something to try to make this team like they're kind of the same every year, right? They're kind of in the mix. You never really know, but he actually did make that move to move Brock Nelson. I think I heard that they're trying to re-sign Palmieri. I think.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that. But anyway, I was kind of shocked when I woke up this morning and saw that deal. But it kind of like it's about time that they kind of do something and even give like a guy like Brock Nelson a shot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's been a loyal guy but yeah, that was a pretty good deal for the Avs for sure.
Yeah, all of a sudden they look like they were always a contender, but now acquiring Charlie Coyle, Brock Nelson down the middle,
Right.
and Jack Drury in that Rantanen trade, and that's another one. Go ahead. You need to get that?
Nope. No. I was going to say, I will say this about the Islanders. They did do their homework because the Avalanche gave up Callum Ritchie, who has a lot of potential to be a really good player. I mean, obviously he was a first round pick, I think in 27th overall, but he's got a ton of upside. So you got a young player that's, I know you gave Brock away, but actually not a bad pickup for obviously at all for Ritchie, a young guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Islanders made out pretty well there.
Yeah.
I think they got a future. Was it a first round pick? I'd have to go.
They got a first and a third. They got a first in 26 and a third in 28. So
yes, they made out all right.
The thing with the Flyers is we got all these first rounders, and it's great. I wish the draft was a lot deeper, but every year they say, "Oh, next year's is deeper." Next year's like I thought this year was going to be deep, and it's maybe not as deep. But you got to hit on these two, and it's a lot of pressure. I trust Danny totally. I love Danny Briere, and I think he's doing a good job, and he's doing what he has to do, right? But you do have to hit on some of these picks.
Yeah, and that's a good little segue. Like, what do you think the plan is for the summer? I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. Like with all these picks that they're kind of garnering up, and all of a sudden they have $12 million in cap space now, and
Right.
the $5 million comes off the books for Farabee, and Kuzmenko now in the future. What do you kind of see this team doing? Like, what's number one priority, you think?
Well, that's funny. We talk about this a lot. Everyone, think about it, 26, you really get a lot of, I think your cap really opens up in 26, but like you said, you do have some money to play with here. Obviously, Ratnan's off the board. I will say this, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all. Because I've worked with John Tortorella with USA Hockey like four or five times, and I love him as a human. He's a great guy. Some can't deal with his coaching style, right? Like the two guys who we traded away a few weeks ago, Beezer, Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost. How easy is it going to be to get a big free agent signing if he's coaching your team? And again, that's no disrespect to Torts. Torts has his way. It's the way it is.
Yep.
That part of it, I know he's got to think, if I'm not, you guys would probably know a little bit better than me. I think he has another year on his coaching contract. So I'm interested to see what they do. I know Torts wants to coach, right? Like he wants to coach, but it scares me a little bit because this new age of player, the game's not like it used to be. I don't mean to sound like an old goat, but it's a little different now. Some guys can handle it, some guys can't. And I don't know how many free agents want to come for that right away. I think we're still obviously a couple of years away from, unfortunately, maybe even making the playoffs. And I hope I'm wrong. Christ, if we win the other night against Calgary, you're 2 points out of a wild card spot. Blows my mind away how tight it is, looking at all the teams. But that's the only thing, like when you ask about what do I think they'll do, I think Danny's going to try to do something. But the one thing that does worry me is players, if they want to come play for Torts. And again, I don't mean that disrespectfully at all to him
No.
because I Torch is an unbelievable human being, like he really is. So I don't know what they're going to do. Do they use any of these first rounds to make a trade for a player that's already under contract? Maybe that could happen at the draft or before the draft. So I guess you put me on the spot, but I don't have a great answer for you because I think it's kind of up in the air on what they do with Torts. There's been talk, maybe he's going to go upstairs. I don't think Torts will not coach. He said when he got here, I'm going to coach these years and then I'm done coaching. I have a hard time believing that.
So do I.
Maybe he's telling the truth, but
so it was interesting that there was an interview that he gave. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 3 weeks, something like that. And the question was asked to him because there was, for whatever reason, there was a lot of buzz, or there was a lot of, is he going to finish coaching out his 4th year? And I want to ask you that in a second, but the way he answered it was, where am I going? I'm here. Like I'm not going anywhere. I'll be back as long as Danny wants me back, kind of thing. So in my mind, I took it as if they ask him to come back, I don't think that he would say no. Maybe it's a 2-year deal kind of thing or a 3-year. I don't know. Maybe not a 4, but that's how I took it. Like if they ask him to come back, I think Torts would be open to it. Like this would be his final destination spot, but it sounded like he left the door open to continue coaching. I wonder if he feels like he has unfinished business, because usually his teams make the playoffs by, year 2 or 3, and he hasn't really come close.
Last year was, I thought they were getting in. I mean, the numbers, the percentage I forget what that date is. Maybe it is the trade deadline. It looked like they were going in, and then all hell broke loose, and there were things going on the inside that, it had an effect on everything. I can't really say, but I don't see them obviously now. I wasn't sure they were going to make the playoffs. I was hopeful because I feel like everyone's like, oh, well, you don't get as high a draft pick. I understand that part of it too, but players don't like losing. You don't like having a losing culture, which I do not think is going on here. I think everyone over there is positive. They know the plan and what Danny and Jonesy have to do. But man, like last year, if they could have just snuck in just the experience alone, I can just tell you there is nothing better than playoff hockey. And you know that as a fan, going to a game in Philadelphia, orange, the orange out or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, it's just, you get chills, like even as a equipment guy, and trainers, it's everyone. It's like, there's nothing like it. I think that would have been huge for a lot of these young kids to get that taste. And it was funny, some of the kids, I see a lot of the guys a lot, and man, when the Phillies were on their roll, like they're like, man, that's what it's like. I'm like, dude, you have no idea. Yeah. Like you're outside, you hear how loud it is. You get inside of a building and that place is rocking. You're willing to do anything to win, right? And I wish they could have snuck in last year, and I don't really think they're going to have a sniff now. And I'm not putting anyone down. I just think they've lost some players here, and it's probably not in the cards. But in saying that, I don't know if Torts may feel like he has unfinished business, but he did say when he got here, after this contract, I'm done. And then, like you said, well, if they'll have me, I'll stay. So
yeah,
I just don't know. It goes back to what I was saying about free agent. I've heard other people on networks and stuff kind of talk about that. Like, might be hard to get a guy that's been around the league a little bit, even if you're offering a lot of money. This is a great place to play. Like, this is obviously, I bleed black and orange. I have my whole life, but that does come into play, unfortunately.
Yeah, totally does. Nest, we've had you a little bit over half an hour. We know you got to get back to work over there.
No worries, man.
Appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have to do this more often. Catch up again soon.
Anytime, Jack. Say the little guy woke up. He's back at it. All right, man.
Yeah.
Nest, before we let you run, where can everybody find you at social media? Where can they listen to your pod?
We are on. I think we're on the Nasty Knuckles podcast. Is on basically every platform. YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube. iRadio, everything. iRadio, Apple, all that stuff. Spotify, and my personal one is what is it? Nasty World. I think. I don't even. How bad is that? I don't even know what it is. I'll tell you though.
Yeah, sorry. You don't need to. They're probably already following you anyways.
I doubt it. Yeah, I'm D Nasty World on Instagram.
There you go. Give him a follow. You just had Chris Pronger on your latest episode, so make sure everybody go head over to Nasty Knuckles and give him a listen.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys. Good luck the rest of the day here. Maybe you get some more things going here in the last 30 minutes.
Yes, sir. It'll be fun.
Fingers crossed. Thanks again.
All right, brother. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy, Nast. Thanks again.
See you,
Bye-bye.
boys.
All right, always fun talking to Nasty there. A lot of great insight. And look, for exactly the reasons we wanted to have him on, he hit the ball out of the park with all the Scott Laughton talk. The Flyers are missing a big piece now that, while maybe people want to argue not on the ice, maybe they can't fill up those stats, or they can fill up the stats. They're missing the heartbeat of the team. The heart of the team might have just been traded. And, how do you replace that? Like, I'm curious to see how the team responds, in the coming days. They have 2 games this weekend. You trade Scott Laughton on a Friday, you turn around, you got to play the Kraken at 12:30 Saturday afternoon, and then a division rival in New Jersey on Sunday afternoon.
Growing up is hard to do, Jim. It is, but that's what it's about. You did mention with Nasty talking about the offseason this year. One thing that we had discussed was potentially offer sheets. Well, guess what? Wyatt Johnson's closing in on a 5-year extension worth $8.4 million. We'll see when it's officially announced, but there's one center most likely going to be taken off the market. So, shucks.
There you go. Yeah, Wyatt Johnson, that's a big name. Looks like Jeff Marek just reported that there. Contract announcement expected. Yeah, it's going to be interesting here. We have we got 22 minutes left here until the 3 p.m. trade deadline. It doesn't look like anything is really rolling in. We have a tweet that I would like to put up. Do I still have screen share on? Because this is a good one. Mitch Behaven on Twitter has been putting up some good stuff. And let me get that up for him. All right. Briere and company have traded Provorov, Cutter Gauthier, Kevin Hayes, Sean Walker. I had to think about that, but I got it.
Hey, all right.
Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, and now today, Andrei Kuzmenko and Scott Laughton. So he's done a lot in the time that he's been here, Danny Briere. Are you happy with what he's done so far?
I mean, I don't know how you can't be. What more could you expect? If you're upset that Rissa wasn't moved yet, well, I think when he took over the team, we were in a spot we thought we were going to have to pay to get rid of him or wait it out. So the fact that we're in a scenario where we're looking to get assets back and he's going to be a useful player going forward, can't be too upset about that. I mean, the Provorov deal alone netted you 2 first-round picks and your Hell's Grants. Like, I mean, that's a knockout of the park. They got screwed with Carter Hart with all that, so you just lose a massive asset there. And yeah, he still dealt with the Cutter Gauthier thing, bringing in Drysdale. Say what you will about that, where you're at with that. I'm sure people on both sides of that fence, not so much the trade, just Drysdale's, development so far. I think we were looking at moving Sanheim. He's now a valuable player. I don't know, outside of him magically turning them into a contender after a year and a half, what much else you could ask for.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people want the coach fired, but that's a whole nother, thing. And I understand what Nasty was saying. So I don't think this is the off season. They're going to make those free agent signings. It would be more so trades and offer sheets. Next year would be, and that's when his contract's up. So that's what I'm thinking. We'll have a decision on the coach then, and I'll be very surprised if he's extended.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a good topic to bring up, because it is going to be an interesting thing. How much more can John Tortorella do here, right? With the roster that he has, how much more can he do? The Flyers have been, just on the outside of the playoffs now, his last 2 seasons. What more can he do on his own with and I'm not sure let's say this is not the offseason that they add all the talent they need to make a deep playoff run, and it's going to be his last year next year. What more can Torts do? Is it time to start looking elsewhere? I hope they have a short list of guys where if this guy comes available, we'll do something a little premature, a little earlier than we wanted to. We talked about this on our podcast the last couple of weeks. So yeah, it's going to be something to watch for sure. Look, I don't think it's like that for all players. I think a certain type of player will play for John Tortorella. But I think, to Nasty's point, you want a guy where all of the league's best players want to play for, so to say. So something to think about, something to keep an eye on, and we'll see what happens on that front. Another trade went down. This was from a little while ago here. Where did it go? Here we go. This was a bigger one. The Ottawa Senators have traded for Dylan Cousins and Dennis Gilbert, and they've traded away Josh Norris and Bernard Docker to the Buffalo Sabres, along with the 2026 second-round pick, Jacob Bernard Docker. Sorry. Thoughts on that trade, Jack? That was an interesting one. Maybe a classic case of two players in Cousins and Norris that potentially need change of scenery.
That was an interesting one for sure. It's like change of scenery. The caps kind of match, so you're not like, we were interested in Cousins, but it's like, man, what are we giving up for that? We're taking on an awful lot of cap for a long time. This is one of those things where each guy's got an awful lot of cap for a long time. So they're okay there. I kind of like it more for at this time. I think how do I say this? Where we're at today, I think Norris is the better player, but he can't stay healthy. He's just having issues staying healthy. And it's not the same there, where you get a little bit younger with Cousins, and maybe there's something that's been unlocked, and now he's out of an environment that's been known for, not that Ottawa's that much better lately, but out of an environment of perennial losing. He goes to a team that's got some bangers, and maybe they can get something out of him that was they only saw a glimpse of in Buffalo. So at the end of the day, I think I like it more for Ottawa. Ultimately, we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. A couple other trades that went down here. Let me just bring that up again real quick. Yeah, you mentioned the Casey Middlestat and Charlie Coyle trade earlier. So Colorado beefs up down the middle. So they've made a lot of changes to their roster, and I want to bring their lineup back up again on Puck PD, because half of their team right now, half of their forward group was acquired like this season. Hang on, let me share the tab. So you have Marty Nietzsche on your top line here, at least according to Puckpedia, playing with Nathan McKinnon, Brock Nelson, whom they just traded for, and then Charlie Coyle will presumably be the third-line center here with Jack Drury, who also came in the Rantanen deal, playing on your fourth line. They've also traded for Lindgren from the New York Rangers. So they've done a lot of work in season. They've traded for a goaltender in Mackenzie Blackwood. They're all in. So it's going to be interesting to see how fast these guys can gel on their new team, and Nelson and Charlie Coyle. But the Avalanche, Jack, have literally transformed their roster from opening night to now. Like, it's completely different.
They spent a lot of assets too, so I hope it works out for them. Actually, I don't. Not this year, because we have their pick.
We got their pick, yeah.
Yeah, no, they got to get bounced in the first round, but at least they go for it, man. You gotta appreciate that. A lot of times, it's easy to say, "Oh, you overpay," but then if you have a hell of a run or win the cup, who really cares?
Yeah, that's for sure. Boston also made him, is involved in that trade, and they get Casey Middlestat back, so they get a guy down the middle who wasn't really working out in Colorado. Definitely not the way that I thought, because I made sure to sign him in our dynasty free agency draft this summer. So kind of stuck with Casey Middlestat. Hopefully works out a little bit playing with Boston, whoever he plays with. Let's see what else we have down here. We have Luke Kunin to Columbus. We have the big Mikko Rantanen trade to Dallas. Brandon Tanev to Winnipeg, we mentioned. Obviously, Scott Laughton. You know what I wanted to ask Nasty about? I meant to ask him a little bit about Grebenkin, and if you heard anything about him on that sense. But I wanted to play the clip for him. I'll play that clip one more time before we wrap up today. But yeah, a busy trade deadline day. Beauvillier went to Washington from Pittsburgh. I think that's the second or third time he's been traded in the last year or so. Oliver Shillington went to Anaheim yesterday. That Brock Nelson trade was a massive deal.
Jim, what were your thoughts on the on Tampa Bay? What was that, a day and a half ago now?
Oh,
two first round picks, but they got Yanni Gord and
I'm glad you brought this up because I almost forgot about this. The no income tax state teams are just absolutely mopping things up every trade deadline, every summer, and every year. It's the same 4 teams in the conference finals. It's Vegas, Dallas. It's Florida, Tampa Bay. Nashville was in there for a little while too. Players want to go play in Nashville like you saw last summer. Kind of blew up in their face, but they went out and signed guys like Stamkos, like Shea, like Marchessault. And so there needs to be something done. I'm not sure what it is, but these teams can sign, and what they do is they sign depth players for less, where they can give depth players more money, and then they can sign their stars for less. And so I'm gonna look. People can argue this all they want. It's an absolute advantage, and in my opinion, it's why we won't see a Canadian team. And I hope maybe we're wrong, because I would like to see Scott Laughton potentially win a cup, and I think it would be absolute madness up there if Toronto won a cup. But I don't think we're going to see it. It's so tough, especially for the Canadian teams, to compete with these teams, right? I mean, number one, where would you rather live? Would you rather live in Dallas, Florida, Nashville, Vegas, or would you rather live in Edmonton? And there's nothing wrong with Edmonton. The people up there are great. Weather-wise, I'm saying. Some people like the cold, some people don't. Would you rather be taxed out of your ass, or would you rather keep most of your money? And I know that wherever these players play, whatever city they play in, they get taxed, that way. But if you have 41 home games in Florida, your income's not getting taxed. And so it's an advantage for these teams. And we're seeing Florida make a huge move. We saw Tampa Bay make huge moves. Every year they're making a move. Dallas goes out and acquires Rantanen. They may not be done. I know we're down to the final 12 minutes here, but every year it's something to take notice. It's something to watch. And then come playoff time, watch who the last 3 or 4 teams are in the playoffs. Every year it's going to be Vegas or Dallas. There's going to be a Florida team in there. It's just, I don't know. It's something that I think the league needs to take a look at and figure out a way to make things fair.
What's wild about that is not only do they have this tax-free income state, but teams like Tampa and Vegas, we both seen take advantage of LTIR on top of that. So they have these mega teams going into the playoffs. It is just a massive red flag for the NHL to look at it and just do something. It's like you should not have these. And I understand it's not something the league did or anything like that, but it's a fact. It wasn't an issue back in the day because there was no cap. Now there is. This is an issue. Fix it. As simple as that. The whole idea is a clear, fair playing field. So if there's an issue or loophole or something, fix it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, that's all. So something to keep an eye on. Sean C. chimes in with a little tongue-in-cheek comment here, which I appreciate. Given how long it took Peltier and Kuzmenko to finally play for the Flyers, I imagine Grebenkin won't be able to play a game for the Phantoms or Flyers until next November. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. That's a good point. Nobody knows.
He is in Toronto. It's a Canadian city. Oh, here we go again.
Yeah, they'll give him a week off, so maybe that'll be good for him. Who knows?
Yeah,
but yeah, great point. Yeah. What else do we got? Any more trades rolling here? I think we got a couple smaller ones. You mentioned the Joey Veleno trade to Chicago. Smaller deal, but I think it was a good deal for Chicago. I think Joey Veleno needed a change of scenery. He wasn't really getting things done in Detroit. It was a higher draft pick, former first-round pick. Could be a sneaky good trade for Chicago. Cody Glass, might remember him from was it the Phil Myers trade?
Yep.
Cody Glass has been traded to New Jersey. So New Jersey maybe strikes out a little bit on the trade front and has to settle for Cody Glass. They were a team rumored to be in on Scott Laughton. That deal is as of 2/21. I haven't been on Twitter. Have things kind of calmed down a little bit there?
Yeah, I just refreshed the page. And then I was refreshing the trade tracker page as well. I don't see a whole lot. I see people upset that we can't offer sheet Wyatt Johnson. I see back check, forecheck, paycheck. Yeah, not a whole lot right now. Although this trade tracker thing isn't updating as fast as I would have liked. I don't even see the Laughton trade on here, for God's sakes, but I see trades that happened after it. Do you have 100% certainty on, was it a 2026 first? No, wait, yeah, 2026 first or 2027 first?
For lots?
Yeah, I thought it was 2027. I hoped it was 26, but
yeah, the last I saw it was a 27. Why are they flip-flopping that still?
It depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, last I saw it was 2027.
Okay.
And it's not updated yet on Puckpedia, so maybe the trade is not official. Maybe
That's got to be it with the retention and whatnot. But that's something Nasty said. It's so true. It's like every year, it's like this year is a great draft. Then you get to the draft, it's like, oh no, it's the next one. That's exactly how I feel about this draft coming up.
Yeah.
Like when we traded, our first round pick to Edmonton, I was like, oh well, next year's draft's better anyway. And then it's like, no, just kidding. No, it's not. So yeah. I don't know. I think Vegas, the Golden Knights, might be doing something. I'm not sure what. Their account tweeted hi. Why do you do that?
Interesting.
You got 7 minutes till the deadline and change, but so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, look, fans can't say that the Flyers sat on their hands. They moved 2 out of the suspected, because I think a lot of people forgot about Kuzmenko or, didn't think that he was going to be moved kind of thing. They moved 2 out of the 3 guys that had big potential to be moved. Cam York was always a dark horse, maybe not actually a trade deadline guy. Excuse me. But Risto, it sure seems like he's sticking around unless Vegas is poking around a bit there. It's been a while since I've seen their team needs, but maybe
we can't retain any money. So, they've been adamant they don't want to retain money. I mean, this year, if it's just this year, that doesn't matter. Surprise at Laughton, although it's very, very little. But Risto, they were pretty adamant they don't want to retain any money. So I don't know. I feel like you're running out of time. There's zero traction. Usually we get those texts or those tweets that comes, this team's done for the day, or this team's done for the day. I haven't seen anything like that. So maybe they are still trying to, pull some stuff. But as it stands right now, a whole lot of nothing. And sure enough, wouldn't you, Anthony Sanfilippo, the Flyers are done for today. No deals materialized for either Zamula or Paling. I believe they were just trying to get Paling. They were trying to get Paling to New Jersey, but the Devils traded for Glass instead. That's stupid on the Devils' part. I mean, I'd much rather have Paling. I'm obviously biased. But, so it sounds like that's it for the Fly guys. I know you're not surprised Risto wasn't moved. Yeah,
it is what it is. They'll have him for one more year. It might be a little bit easier to stomach retaining money. He has 2 more years left, actually, after this, doesn't he?
Correct.
So, that was always going to be a little tougher to stomach if they had to retain money. And if, we saw Jake Wallman moved for a first and a prospect that I'd never heard of, and he's only making $3.4 million. So, I guess it made more sense for them to keep him. That's fine. They got a nice little, I think, something to hold people over with the Laughton trade, and maybe Risto's a next year deal. And he's a fine player as is right now to keep around. So we'll see. Zamula didn't get traded. His name is floated out there. So with Ant Sanfilippo, basically calling the day for the Flyers. Why don't we do the same here? It's 5 minutes till 3 p.m. If anything comes in after 3 p.m., you can bet that we'll be back. But Jack, why don't we wrap up the 2025 edition of the HW Hockey Trade Deadline Show?
Yeah, let's do it. The Flyers are done for the day. Guess we are too. We have trades. Nobody can freak out. Nobody can blame Torts because that's just what you do. The hate on Danny has subsided because up until at least the Kuzmenko deal, people are losing their minds. And sure enough, he waits out and he gets what he wants. So
Yep.
Another W.
So that's going to do it for everyone. Thank you for tuning in, all 1,030 of you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to go subscribe. Help us on our quest to 1,000 subscribers. Leave a comment, give us a like, set notifications, but make sure you give us a subscribe on YouTube. We also have podcasts out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to set alerts so you're the first in line when we drop a new show. For all of our latest episodes, articles, and updates, head over to hwhockey.net. For Jack Smith, I'm Jim Iacovone, and for Sean Smith, his HW debut. We're going to sign off. We'll see all you guys. We'll be back for a podcast on Monday or Wednesday next week to wrap up the trade deadline and see where the Flyers go from there. So we'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.